Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Boredom whispers its familiar refrain under fluorescent hymns, an indistinct melody in the accounting hollows of Weston Financial Services, where Tuesday's tempo crawls, tethering drudgery in routine's leash. Repetitious tasks trudge through identical spreadsheets, coffee-stained mugs, and living gray. Outside, autumn is ablaze, defiant against the muted haven within. Vibrant leaves pirouette in the wind, painting a vivid tapestry in sharp defiance of the sober indoor monotone. A heavy sigh births itself from the lungs, escaping the ennui of mandatory clerical tapping, a keyboard symphony of fleeting data entry. Oblivious to the outside world and its riot of colors, the office drone was interrupted by a colleague's voice, its melody ever familiar.
Hey, have you finished the Henderson account yet? Almost done. Just double-checking the quarterly projections.
That was life for Carson Wheeler. 32 years old, senior accountant, master of Excel, and prisoner of routine. His dark brown hair was neatly trimmed in the same style he'd worn since college. His wardrobe consisted primarily of button-down shirts in varying shades of blue and khaki pants that had been on rotation for years. The clock finally struck 5, and Carson powered down his computer with a practiced motion. He gathered his things, nodded goodbye to coworkers whose conversations he'd tuned out hours ago, and headed for the elevator. Outside, the crisp air filled his lungs as he loosened his blue tie. His apartment was only 6 blocks away, an easy walk that served as the most adventure he experienced on weekdays. But today, something compelled him to take a different route home. A narrow side street he'd never explored beckoned, lined with boutique shops and cafes. Among them stood a peculiar storefront he'd never noticed before, a pop-up shop with a hand-painted sign that read, Kaleidoscope, Curiosities, and Transformations. The display window featured an array of unusual items, illuminated by strings of tiny lights. Something glimmered, catching his attention. A collection of glass bottles in shapes he'd never seen before, each containing liquids that seemed to shift and change color as he watched.
We're closing in 10 minutes.
A melodic voice called out as Carson pushed open the door, a small bell announcing his entrance. The shop smelled of sandalwood and something else he couldn't identify. Something almost electric. Shelves lined the walls, filled with objects that seemed both ancient and somehow futuristic.
Just browsing,
Carson replied, his voice sounding strangely formal in the intimate space. The shopkeeper, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, pulled into an intricate braid, smiled knowingly.
Browse away. Sometimes the right item finds you when you least expect it.
Carson nodded politely and wandered deeper into the shop. His fingers trailed along shelves of curiosities, hand-bound books, crystals that seemed to pulse with inner light, antique jewelry boxes. Then he saw it, a small bottle on a velvet cushion, containing what appeared to be nail polish. Unlike any he'd seen before, it shimmered with an iridescent quality that shifted between deepest purple and brilliant teal as the light hit it. The label, written in elegant script, read, Metamorphosis.
Interesting choice.
The shopkeeper appeared beside him, making him jump slightly. Oh, I was just looking, Carson began, embarrassed at being caught examining nail polish. It's quite special, she continued as if he hadn't spoken.
For those seeking change.
She picked up the bottle and held it to the light. The transformation begins small, on the surface, but eventually reaches much deeper. I don't wear... Carson trailed off, unable to explain why he felt so drawn to the bottle. The shopkeeper placed it in his hand.
$28. Unless you'd prefer something else?
Something about her tone, gentle yet challenging, made Carson reach for his wallet. He left the shop with the small bottle tucked into his jacket pocket, feeling both foolish and strangely exhilarated. In his apartment, after a microwaved dinner and a beer, Carson removed the bottle from his pocket and placed it on his coffee table. The polish seemed to move inside the glass, hypnotic and alive.
This is ridiculous,
he muttered to himself, but didn't put the bottle away. For years, he'd lived exactly as expected. Safe choices, predictable outcomes. The accounting major who became an accountant. The man who wore the same style clothes he'd worn for a decade. The person whose wildest Friday night involved ordering a different type of takeout. The nail polish seemed to mock his carefully constructed blandness. It represented everything he wasn't. Vibrant, unpredictable, bold. Before he could reconsider, Carson unscrewed the cap. The scent was unlike any nail polish he'd smelled before. Notes of orchid and ozone, with something underneath he couldn't name. He kicked off his shoes and socks, propped his foot on the coffee table, and with surprisingly steady hands, began to apply the polish to his toenails. The brush glided smoothly, depositing color that seemed to shift and dance. Once applied, the polish didn't look quite as dramatic as in the bottle, but still caught the light in a way that fascinated him. He completed all 10 toes, admiring his handiwork with a strange sense of satisfaction.
At least no one will see them at work,
he rationalized, then laughed at himself for even needing to justify the small act of rebellion. That night, Carson slept deeply for the first time in months. His dreams were vivid, swimming through colored light, shedding layers of clothing that had grown too heavy, emerging into something new. The first sensations upon waking were subtle. The sheets felt different against his skin, smoother, as if his nerves had become more sensitive overnight. Sunlight streaming through his blinds seemed brighter, almost musical in its intensity. Carson stretched, arching his back, and froze mid-motion. Something felt profoundly different about his body. His chest felt heavier, his hips wider. With growing alarm, he looked down at himself. Where his flat chest had been were now unmistakably feminine breasts. His hands, when he raised them before his face, were smaller, with longer, more tapered fingers. Heart racing, he stumbled to the bathroom and flipped on the light. The face in the mirror was his, but not his. The same brown eyes stared back, but they were now framed by longer lashes. His jaw was softer, his lips fuller. His brown hair, which had been short and practical yesterday, now fell in soft waves to his shoulders.
"What the?"
The voice that emerged was higher, melodic. Trembling, Carson looked down at his body. He was now undeniably physically female. His pajama bottoms hung loosely around newly curved hips. His t-shirt stretched across breasts that hadn't existed when he'd fallen asleep. The nail polish on his toes still gleamed, catching the bathroom light with supernatural brilliance.
"Metamorphosis,"
Carson whispered, remembering the shopkeeper's words. The transformation begins small, on the surface, but eventually reaches much deeper. Panic rose in his chest. He rushed back to the bedroom, grabbed his phone and searched for the shop. Nothing came up. He tried to recall the exact street, planning to go there immediately, but found his memory strangely hazy on the details. Hours passed in a daze. Carson called in sick to work, something he'd done perhaps twice in his entire career. He examined his new body with disbelief, alternating between panic and a strange, unexpected fascination. By mid-afternoon, the initial shock had given way to a strange sense of calm. Looking in the mirror again, Carson studied the feminine face staring back. There was something right about it, something that resonated in a way he hadn't anticipated. Milani. The word slipped out unexpectedly. It felt right on her lips. A name she'd always found beautiful, but had never shared with anyone. I'm Milani, she said more confidently, testing the name with her new voice. The decision came suddenly. She needed clothes that fit. Her own wardrobe of button-downs and khakis would hang awkwardly on her new form. Rummaging through her closet, she found an old university sweatshirt and a pair of joggers with a drawstring she could tighten. After a shower, an experience both awkward and revelatory as she navigated washing her new body, Milani dressed and ventured out. The way people looked at her was entirely different. Men's gazes lingered. Women offered small smiles of recognition. Her body moved differently, requiring adjustments to her posture and gait. The department store loomed ahead, and Milani took a deep breath before entering. She wandered through women's clothing, overwhelmed by options she'd never considered before. Fabrics, cuts, styles, all new territory. A sales associate approached, sensing her uncertainty. First time shopping for yourself? The woman asked kindly. Milani nodded, surprised at the woman's perceptiveness. Let's start with basics. What's your style usually like? I'm not sure I have one, Milani admitted. The associate, whose name tag read Diana, smiled. Perfect opportunity to find out then. Let's try a few different things. Under Diana's guidance, Milani found herself in a fitting room with an array of options. Jeans that hugged her new curves, tops in fabrics that felt luxurious against her skin, and finally, a navy blue wrap dress that made her gasp when she saw her reflection. That's definitely a winner, Diana said when Milani emerged. It's versatile, comfortable, and looks amazing on you. Milani couldn't stop staring at herself. The dress accentuated her waist and draped perfectly over her hips. She looked elegant, put together in a way Carson had never managed despite years of trying. I'll take it, she decided. Along with the dress, she purchased essential undergarments, jeans, tops, and a pair of low-heeled ankle boots. Each item felt like a step toward embodying this new identity. The final stop was the makeup counter, where another helpful associate taught her basics: concealer, mascara, a neutral lipstick. Milani paid attention to every detail, absorbing information like a sponge. Returning to her apartment laden with bags, Milani felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She arranged her new clothes in the closet alongside Carson's button-downs, creating a visual representation of the transformation. That evening, dressed in her new clothes with makeup carefully applied, Milani studied herself in the full-length mirror. The woman who looked back was beautiful in an understated way, natural, real. She touched her face, still marveling at its new contours. "Hello, Milani," she whispered to her reflection. The practical questions began to surface. Work, friends, family. How would she explain this transformation? Who would believe her? The weight of these questions pressed down, threatening to crush the fragile peace she'd found. Then, her phone rang, startling her. The screen displayed her boss's name. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Milani, it's Robert from Weston Financial. I'm calling about your brother Carson's position." "Brother?" Milani blinked in confusion. "He emailed his resignation this morning. Something about needing to pursue a different path. Since you're listed as his emergency contact, I wanted to check if everything's all right. It's very unlike him to leave without notice." Milani's mind raced. "Yes, he's been considering a change for some time. I apologize for the abruptness." "No need to apologize. We'll mail his final check to the address on file. Please tell him the door is always open if he reconsiders." After hanging up, Milani sat in stunned silence. The world had adjusted to accommodate her transformation. Somehow, in the reconfiguration of reality, Carson hadn't disappeared, but had become her brother, a person who had existed all along in this new timeline. Her computer revealed more changes. Social media accounts now belonged to Milani Wheeler, showing photos of a life she recognized but hadn't lived. College graduation, family holidays, vacations, all featuring her female self. Carson appeared in some as her slightly older brother. The implications were staggering. The nail polish hadn't simply changed her body, it had rewritten reality itself. Days passed as Milani explored her new existence. Her apartment remained the same, but now contained subtle differences. More colorful throw pillows, a collection of novels Carson had never read. Framed photographs of Milani with friends she didn't remember making. She discovered that she had credentials as a financial consultant, similar to Carson's accounting background, but with a focus on private clients rather than corporate accounts. Her bank account showed a healthy balance, and her calendar contained appointments with clients. 1 week after her transformation, Milani sat in a cafe reviewing client files on her laptop. She'd adapted to her new body, new voice, new identity with surprising ease. The brown-haired woman in the navy blue wrap dress bore little resemblance to the accountant in khakis who had once occupied her space. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Milani looked up to see a man gesturing to the chair across from her. Tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Not at all," she replied, moving her purse to make room.
"I'm Daniel,"
he said, settling into the chair with his coffee.
"I hope I'm not interrupting your work."
"Milani, and no, I was just finishing up." She closed her laptop, suddenly aware of how easily her new name rolled off her tongue. Their conversation flowed naturally, touching on their work. He was an architect. Favorite books, and the best coffee shops in the neighborhood. When he asked for her number before leaving, Milani gave it without hesitation. That evening, standing on her balcony watching the sunset, Milani reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. Had the shopkeeper known what would happen? Had the nail polish simply revealed what was already there beneath Carson's carefully constructed existence? The questions remained unanswered, but the panic had subsided. In its place was a growing certainty that this transformation, however inexplicable, had been necessary. Carson had existed in stasis, moving through life without truly living it. Milani was determined to embrace every moment, every sensation, every opportunity. Her phone chimed with a text from Daniel, asking about dinner that weekend. She smiled and typed her reply. "I'd love to."
"Looking forward to it."
The polish on her toenails still caught the light as she moved, a reminder of the catalyst that had set everything in motion. Milani made no move to remove it, wondering if perhaps it was now a permanent part of her, this small, shimmering reminder of metamorphosis. 3 months later, Milani's consulting business was thriving. She had developed a reputation for clear communication and innovative strategies that Carson, with his by-the-book approach, had never achieved. Her client list had grown, requiring her to rent a small office downtown. The navy blue wrap dress had been joined by others in various colors and styles, all carefully selected to suit her developing sense of personal style. Elegant but comfortable, professional, without being severe. Her growing confidence showed in everything from her posture to her willingness to speak her mind in client meetings. Daniel had become a fixture in her life. Their relationship progressed naturally from coffee to dinner to weekends spent exploring the city. He admired her intelligence and independence, never questioning her occasional moments of uncertainty when navigating social situations from her new perspective.
"You look beautiful today,"
he said, meeting her for lunch at their favorite bistro. "That color suits you." Milani smoothed the burgundy dress she'd carefully selected that morning. "Thank you. I'm still learning what works for me." "Well, you're a natural." His eyes crinkled when he smiled, a detail she found endlessly endearing. After lunch, walking back to her office, Daniel took her hand.
"I've been thinking about taking a weekend trip to the coast. Would you be interested?"
Milani hesitated briefly. They hadn't yet taken their relationship to a physical level. Her choice, as she navigated the complexities of her new body and identity. Daniel had been patient, never pushing. "I'd love that," she decided, squeezing his hand. That evening, alone in her apartment, Milani opened the drawer where she kept mementos of her former life. Carson's class ring, his favorite tie, the business card from his first job. These items hadn't changed with the transformation, remaining as artifacts of an existence that had been rewritten. Among them was the bottle of nail polish, still half full, the liquid inside continuing its hypnotic shift between purple and teal. Milani held it up to the light, studying its movement. A notification on her phone interrupted her contemplation. An email from her mother asking when she'd be visiting next. In this new reality, her parents lived in the same suburban home where Carson had grown up, but now with photographs of their daughter Milani alongside their son Carson throughout childhood. Milani had spoken with them by phone, but hadn't yet visited, uncertain how to face people who now had memories of a life she hadn't lived. The email forced the issue. Her father's birthday was approaching, and her absence would be conspicuous. The weekend trip with Daniel would have to wait. Milani booked a flight home, packed a suitcase with careful consideration, and tried to prepare herself for the surreal experience ahead. Her mother met her at the airport, embracing her with familiar warmth. "You look wonderful, sweetheart. That new haircut frames your face perfectly." Milani touched her brown hair self-consciously. "Thanks, Mom. It's good to see you." The drive to her childhood home was filled with her mother's updates on family friends and neighborhood news. Milani listened carefully, filing away details of relationships and events she was supposed to know. Her father greeted her with his characteristic bear hug. "There's my girl. Still breaking hearts in the big city?" "Dad, please." Milani laughed, slipping easily into the daughter role. The house was exactly as she remembered, but with subtle differences. The spare room that had been Carson's growing up now contained evidence of Milani's childhood, dance trophies, framed artwork, photographs of a girl with familiar brown eyes. "We kept your room exactly as you left it after college," her mother said, opening the door. "Though I do dust occasionally." The room was a revelation. Feminine without being frilly, clearly belonging to someone with definite opinions and interests. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on finance, classic literature, and travel, A bulletin board displayed concert tickets, postcards, and photographs of Milani with friends throughout high school and college. "I'll let you get settled," her mother said. "Dinner's at 6. Your brother's flight gets in at 5, so your father's picking him up on the way home from golf." Carson was coming. The brother who had once been her. Milani sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what this would mean. Would he recognize her? Remember their shared past? Or had the metamorphosis created a complete separation? The hours until dinner passed in a haze of anxiety. Milani changed into a simple green dress, applied light makeup, and practiced controlling her breathing. The sound of the front door opening sent her heart racing. "Where's my birthday boy?" Her father's voice carried up the stairs. "In the kitchen, helping me with salad," her mother called back. Then another voice, familiar yet strange. "Something smells amazing, Mom." Milani descended the stairs slowly. In the kitchen threshold stood a man who looked remarkably like she had 3 months ago. The same height, similar features, identical brown hair cut in that practical style. But there were differences too. His posture more confident, his smile more genuine than she remembered seeing in the mirror. Their eyes met, and for a heart-stopping moment, Milani thought she saw recognition flash across his face. Then he smiled broadly. "Milani, get over here and give your big brother a hug." She crossed the room on unsteady legs and embraced him. It was surreal. The feeling of being held by arms that had once been hers, smelling the same cologne she had worn for years. "You look great," he said, stepping back to examine her. "Consulting must agree with you better than that corporate job did." "You too," she managed. "How's Portland treating you?" According to the new reality, Carson had moved to Oregon 2 years ago for a position with an environmental accounting firm. A career change Carson, who became Milani, had only dreamed about. Dinner was a strange experience, filled with family stories that now included both siblings. Milani listened as Carson recounted childhood pranks and teenage rebellions she had no memory of but apparently had participated in. Their parents shared embarrassing stories of both children with equal enthusiasm. After dessert, Carson suggested a walk around the neighborhood. Milani agreed, eager for a chance to speak with him privately. The night air was cool as they strolled past familiar houses. For several minutes, neither spoke. "So," Carson finally broke the silence, "how's the transformation working out for you?" Milani stopped in her tracks. "You know?" He smiled, a little sadly. "Of course I know. We're connected, you and I. Different sides of the same coin." "But how? The nail polish? Metamorphosis? I found it in a shop in Portland 3 months ago." He shrugged. "Or rather, it found me." Milani stared at him. "So you were created when I transformed?" "It's more complicated than that." Carson guided her to a bench beneath a streetlight. "The way the shopkeeper explained it to me, we both always existed. The polish just realigned things, brought us each to the reality where we belonged." "You spoke to the shopkeeper? The same woman?" Carson nodded. "She finds people who need the transformation, people living lives that don't quite fit." Milani absorbed this information slowly. "So, somewhere, there's a reality where I was always Milani, and you were always Carson? And one where we were both different people entirely. The multiverse is vast." He smiled at her expression. "The shopkeeper gets philosophical after closing time." They sat in silence, contemplating the implications. "Are you happy?" Milani finally asked. With your life in Portland?
Happier than I've ever been,
Carson confirmed.
I'm doing work that matters to me, living in a place I love, dating a wonderful woman.
He turned to face her.
The real question is, are you happy, Milani?
The name still sent a small thrill through her, an affirmation of identity. I am. It's strange. There are moments when I still feel like I'm learning to be myself, but then there are others when it feels like I've always been this person.
Because you have,
Carson said simply. We just needed the catalyst to find our way to the right version of ourselves. They walked back to the house, arm in arm, siblings with a bond more complex and profound than their parents could possibly understand. The visit concluded with promises to see each other more often. As Milani embraced Carson goodbye at the airport, she whispered,
Thank you for explaining, for understanding. We're in this together,
he replied.
Different journeys, same starting point.
Back in her apartment, Milani unpacked and prepared for her upcoming weekend with Daniel. The bottle of nail polish sat on her dresser, catching the afternoon light. She applied a fresh coat to her toenails, watching the color shift and change. The weekend at the coast with Daniel marked a turning point. Walking barefoot along the beach, her painted toes sinking into wet sand, Milani felt fully present in her body for the first time. When Daniel kissed her under a star-filled sky, she responded with certainty rather than hesitation. I'm falling in love with you, he told her as they watched the sunrise from their hotel balcony. I've never met anyone quite like you. Milani smiled, thinking how true that statement was in ways he couldn't possibly understand. I'm falling in love with you, too. 6 months after her transformation, Milani's life had taken on a rhythm that felt natural and right. Her consulting business continued to grow, requiring her to hire an assistant. Her relationship with Daniel deepened, bringing discussions of moving in together. She maintained regular contact with her parents and brother, no longer anxious about navigating memories she didn't share. The bottle of polish, now nearly empty, remained on her dresser, a reminder of the strange magic that had brought her to this life. Milani had researched extensively, trying to find the shop or the mysterious shopkeeper, but the search yielded nothing. The transformation remained unexplained by conventional science or logic. One evening, entering her apartment after work, Milani froze. On her coffee table sat a small package wrapped in iridescent paper that shifted colors in the light. No shipping label, no card. With trembling fingers, she unwrapped it to find a bottle identical to the one on her dresser, but full. A small note was attached. For someone else who needs to find their true self. You'll know who. K. Milani held the bottle up to the light, watching the liquid inside move with the same hypnotic quality she remembered. The responsibility weighed heavily. To recognize someone trapped in the wrong life, the wrong identity, and offer them the same chance she'd been given. She placed the bottle in her purse. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but someday she would encounter someone whose eyes held the same quiet desperation she had once felt. Someone longing for transformation. And when that moment came, Milani would be ready to pass on the gift of metamorphosis. The next morning, she dressed carefully in her favorite navy blue wrap dress, the first piece of clothing she had chosen as Milani. In the mirror, a confident woman with warm brown eyes and flowing brown hair smiled back at her. No trace remained of the accountant in khakis who had once occupied this space. Milani Wheeler stepped out into the morning sunlight, ready to embrace another day of the life she was always meant to live.
Thanks for watching, my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.